Today we'll be speaking about surrogate motherhood. Who is the Halachic mother? It's in the headlines now. People that go to Nepal and IVF, in vitro fertilization. What does the halacha say about, we know that the Torah is forever, hafochba, the kulaba. The Mishnah says, turn it over, keep turning it over. All the problems are found in the Torah. You just have to know where to look. And therefore, we make a bracha notein ha-Torah. We make a bracha notein ha-Torah. What does notein ha-Torah mean? Now, not notan. Notein ha-Torah. God is constantly giving the Torah because the Torah is constantly adapting to deal with what? Contemporary issues. It's notein ha-Torah. The oral Torah is vibrant, alive, and every day we get the Torah anew, says Rashi. It says we got the Torah b'yom hazeh. Why b'yom hazeh? So b'yom hahu. The Torah is chadoshim. The Torah is given every day to deal with contemporary problems. So today we're going to take a look. What about IVF and surrogacy? What does the Torah say about that? What does the Torah say about that? Unlike the Christian view, which is that you can't tamper with nature, Judaism, unlike Christianity, considers it a mitzvah to master and harness the forces of nature for the benefit of mankind. In Genesis 1, Pasuk 28, God says, Imilu et ha'aretz v'chibshua. Replenish the earth, God tells Adam, replenish the earth and subdue and conquer all the forces of nature. God is commanding us in Genesis 1:28 that we are obligated to be his partner to develop what? The world. The Rambam in his Mishnah commentary asks, why did God create thousands of species of insects and birds and so many animals? Who needs all of that? So the Rambam says it's all there to serve and benefit mankind. So therefore, the Rambam says whatever we can use for the benefit of mankind, including IVF or surrogacy, is within God's command to us in Genesis 1:28, where he tells Adam, replenish the earth and subdue and conquer the forces of nature. We're supposed to be God's partner in what? In Tikkun Olam. Because the Torah says when God created the world in Genesis, Asher bora lakim lasot. Bora lakim lasot. What does that mean? God created to produce. The term to produce should have been written in the past. V'asa. Asher bora lahim lasot. God made lasot. What does lasot mean? Refers to our role in continuing the ongoing process of what? Of creation. Bora lakim lasot. Says Rambam, God purposely left the world undone. Lasot, it's up to us to continue the process of creation. And therefore, God is called Shaddai. Sha'amar Dai. He did, what does Dai mean? Enough. I have to leave the world undone to give my kindalach a chance to what? Tikkun Olam. He left it for us to complete. Shaddai, Sha'amar Dai. It's up to us to complete the creation process. We're obligated to improve the world. And one way is through what? IVF surrogacy. Now we have to deal with the question, who is the IVF parents?
That's the problem here.
In order to fill the mitzvah of honoring parents, one of the 10 Commandments, who are the test tube baby's parents in order to do the mitzvah of what? Keep it over aim.
The test tube.
Does he have to honor the test tube? And the question you asked me yesterday, does bringing an IVF baby into the world satisfy the first mitzvah of the Torah, which is what? Pruvu. Do you do the mitzvah through an IVF test tube surrogate baby? That's the $64 question that we'll attempt to answer this afternoon. Yes?
Surrogacy is something else, not IVF.
Why not? What's the difference?
Surrogacy is taking an egg and putting it into someone else's body.
Well, the same thing with an IVF. You're taking an... So, but they're both not the natural way.
Not the biologic.
They're both not the natural way. You agree with me? So is that permitted? And do you do the mitzvah pruvu this way also? That's the question that we have to what? Deal with this afternoon. Okay? Now, again, we have to, what? Whether it's allowed and why shouldn't it be allowed, and whether you do the mitzvah pruvu that way. Okay, we'll get to it. Okay?
What are the questions?
The question is it the way to go? If a person cannot have what? Children, biologically, can he what? Do it through IVF? So the answer is that yes, why not? Because infertility is a sickness. And the Torah says, V'rapo yirape. Heal should heal. Says the Rambam, why is it repeated? Cure should cure. The doctor has to do whatever is possible in order to heal the person. And infertility is an illness. And Exodus 21:19 commands the doctor, V'rapo yirape, to heal and to heal again, to do whatever is possible in order to heal the person. And not having a child is an illness, so therefore, why would IVF not be allowed? The question is, does he do the mitzvah pruvu that way? That's the question. Okay? So, rapo yirape. There's a positive mitzvah for a doctor to heal. Unlike the Seventh-day Adventists, we are obligated. Why did God make a person sick? If God made him sick, isn't the doctor going against God's will? Says Rambam, no. Rambam was a doctor. Why did God make him sick? Because he wants Dr. Bernstein to heal him, to give Dr. Schwartz the mitzvah of healing him. So God made him sick, that the doctor should have the schus to heal him. So it would be okay. The question is, do you do the mitzvah of what? Of pruvu through a test tube baby or surrogacy? So we'll get into that. We'll see. But anyway, we are supposed to be God's partners. Genesis 1:28. Mulu et ha'aretz v'chibshuah. God says to Adam and Chava, fill the earth and conquer and subdue it. We are partners with God to improve the world. It's not an option. It's a mitzvah to become God's partner, to continue to improve the world. Asher bara Elohim, God created. What does lasot mean, Yehuda? That we should continue lasot in the future. We have to continue what he began. He loves us so much, he purposely left the world undone to give us the schus, the privilege of what? To be his partner. Right?
But Rabbi,
Yes.
there's a difference between the test tube baby
Right.
and a surrogate mother.
We'll talk about both.
All right.
Okay?
Okay.
What about IVF? Not IDF, IVF. In vitro fertilization, test tube baby. Does one fulfill the mitzvah of pruvu through a test tube baby? Sharona, that's the question on the table, right? There's an amazing midrash that Ben Sira was considered the son of Jeremiah, not the bullfrog, the prophet. The Medrash says that the great philosopher Ben Sira was considered the son of Yirmiyahu, the prophet, even though Ben Sira's mother never engaged in sexual relations with Jeremiah.
Really?
According to the Midrash, fasten your seatbelts, Ben Sira was conceived with the sperm of Jeremiah, collected from a bathtub, and deposited into the womb of Ben Sira's mother. This Midrash teaches us that the father is the one who donates the sperm to fertilize the egg. Ben Sira is considered the son of Jeremiah, even though his mother never had engaged in sexual relations with Jeremiah. The Medrash says Ben Sira was conceived with the sperm of Yirmiyahu, collected, I think it's called sperm donation, 2,600 years ago. 1 minute. And deposited in the womb of Ben Sira's mother. This Medrash Rivka teaches that the father is the one who what? Donates the sperm to fertilize the egg.
Was it done deliberately?
Based on this Medrash, fasten your seatbelts. Based on this Medrash, Sharona, Rav Rabbeinu Ovadia Yosef and Rav Nevinsol, two superstar poskim, rule that the sperm donor is the father of the child, even without the act of sexual intercourse. What's the proof? Jeremiah, not the bullfrog, the prophet. Ben Sira, his son, his sperm, even though he didn't engage in relations with Ben Sira's mother, but it was his sperm collected from the bathtub. You would say a sperm donation, and yet he's called Jeremiah's son, even though Jeremiah never had sexual relations with Ben Sira's mama. Based on this Medrash, Rabbeinu Ovadia Yosef and Rav Nevinsol, the Rav of the old city, rule that the sperm donor is the father of the child, even without the act of sexual relations. They also rule, based on a Bet Shmuel in Even Ezer chapter 1, that any male involved in IVF, not IDF, in vitro fertilization, is the father of the child conceived and has fulfilled the mitzvah approval. Ben Ovadia Yosef, Rabbi Nevinsol, based on this Medrash of Ben Sira, and based on a psak of the Bet Shmuel in Even Ezer chapter 1, that any male involved in the IVF process is the father of the child conceived and has fulfilled the mitzvah approval, the first mitzvah in the Torah, even though no act of marital relations took place. So now we know that the father can do the mitzvah approval even through a sperm bank. Don't argue with the great rabbis. Rabbeinu Ovadia Yosef, Rabbi Nevinsol. Come on. Huh?
How did the sperm get into the bathtub?
Donation.
Wait a second.
Donation. I don't want to get into that. I have a lot of material. I don't know how it got there. But the Medrash says Jeremiah's sperm was collected from the bathtub. So now we know, based on Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Nevinsol, on this Medrash, that the first mitzvah of the Torah can be done by a male through sperm donation, even though no act of marital relations took place. But who is the halachic mother of an IVF baby? Who is the halachic mother of an IVF, not IDF, IVF baby? If a child is Jewish, depends solely on the mama, not the papa. So, say the egg donor, happens all the time, Connie, the egg donor is non-Jewish from Romania or whatever. And the birth mother is a Jew. The egg donor is non-Jewish. The birth mother is a Jew. Does the child need conversion or not?
If the father's Jewish.
It doesn't matter who the father is. It depends on the mama. The father could be Moses. Does that make the kid Jewish? No. The mama. Listen to the question.
But if the father is Moses, then the kid is a Levi. Okay? Even if the mother is not Jewish.
If the egg donor is not Jewish, 1 minute, and the birth mother is Jewish, does the baby need conversion? Is the baby Jewish or not? Stay tuned.
You got a 50-50 vote here.
The postskim in this room, Rabbi Sprecher. Can't reach a decision.
In an IVF baby, who is the halachic mother? Is it the egg donor or is it the birth mother? So Rav Aaron Soloveitchik states that the definition of maternity can be understood based on the Talmud Yevamot 69b, which states that Talmud Yevamot 69b states that during the first 40 days of conception, The fertilized egg is considered maya ba'alma. What does that mean? Only water. The fertilized egg is not viewed as any entity of material substance prior to 40 days. Yevamah 69b. Says Rav Aaron Soloveitchik, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, since the egg donor's relationship with the fetus ends prior to the 40th day, it is a relationship with no halachic status. Therefore, says Rav Aaron Soloveitchik, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, we cannot ascribe any type of relationship between the egg donor and the fetus, because the relationship ends before 40 days. And the Talmud Yevamah says before 40 days, the egg is like what? Water.
So why can't you have an abortion?
1 minute. Says of Aaron Soloveitchik, I'll quote, Aaron Soloveitchik, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, the donor egg is to be viewed as no more than a synthetic material. Therefore, says Aaron Soloveitchik, a child born from a Jewish mother with an implanted egg donated from a Gentile woman requires no conversion, even according to the strictest interpretation of halacha, states of Aaron Soloveitchik. You hear what he says? This confirms the notion that maternity is defined by the woman who carries and gives birth to the child, not to the egg donor. You hear? This Rav Aaron Soloveitchik. Backed up Rav Ovadia Yosef. 2 superstars. You hear? It's the mother who nurtures and gives birth to the fetus decides the halachic status, and not Elisheva, not the one who donates the egg. Now, I see you're a little bit skeptical. 1 minute, Rabbi Yaakov. You're from Missouri. You have to be shown. Rav Aaron Soloveitchik has a proof text to prove that he's right. Fasten your seatbelts. Therefore, I made copies. If you didn't see it, you're not going to believe it. Rav Aaron Soloveitchik says, you don't believe me? I'll show you black on white. Please take a look at what? Your sheet, where it says Bereshis Lamed. You see it says Rivka Bereshis Lamed, or you don't? Bereshis Lamed. It says Bereshis Lamed. Doesn't it say Bereshis Lamed, Rabbi Yaakov Goldman? Does it say? It says Bereshis Lamed. Pasuk Chaf Aleph. Please follow carefully. If this doesn't floor you, I don't know what will. Pasuk Chaf Aleph. Va'acha yolda bat. Afterwards, Leah gave birth to a daughter. Vatikra shema Dina. And she called the girl Dina. Why did she call the baby Dina? Look at Rashi, Chaf Aleph. I think there's a check there. No, you? There's a check there?
And
check and yellow. They call me Mellow. Yellow. Yellow.
Middle of the page.
Dina. Why was she called Dina? Perish Rabbeinu. Rashi quotes Baruchas, page 60. Dina, left side in Rashi, the highlight. Why was she called Dina? Shedana Leah din ba'atzma. Leah, judge. Dina means what? To judge yourself. You believe me. You're not looking in. You believe me. You believe me. Shedana Leah din ba'atzma. You following me? Please.
I don't understand. Period.
Why was she called Dina? Leah judged herself. She said as follows. Imzeh Zohar, she took an amniocentesis. That's what it's called?
And it was a boy.
She saw that the fetus that she's carrying is a boy. I think it's called amniocentesis.
Yes.
Amniocentesis.
Thank you. She said, I can't let this baby be born a boy. Why, Sharana? Leah was a prophet. She knew there's going to be 12 sons of Israel. You counting? If this baby that I'm carrying is a boy, he's number 11. my sister Rachel won't even be like a slave girl. The slave girls had what? 2 sons. If this child is a boy, my poor sister will be less than a slave girl. She can only have what? 1? I won't let it happen, says Mama Leah. V'spala olav, she davened v'nehepach l'nekeva. And this God performed an IVF on Mama Leah. I'm not making this up. You look at Yonatan ben Azil. It's just incredible. Yonatan ben Azil. You see? The bottom of the page. Is there a check there, Yehuda? Yes. Says Yonatan ben Azil. You see that?
The headline is
Yonatan ben Azil. Fasten your seatbelts. Rivka, it gets better. Yonatan ben Azil. You have that? Hafochba v'afochba the kulaba. Ein chadash kani tachas hashemesh. There's nothing new under the sun. If doctors can do IVF, God can also do IVF. Look at this incredible Yonatan ben Azil. Take a look. Where do we begin? At the beginning, right? Ushma min kadam Hashem. In yellow. Is it highlighted?
third line down.
Ushmiya min kadam Hashem. Selusa de Leah. God heard Leah's plea. I'm reading Yonatan ben Azil, the underlined of Yaakov. You're looking, Ushmiya min kadam Hashem. Selusa de Leah. Aramaic. God heard Leah's cry that I can't allow this baby to be born a boy. My poor sister will be less than the slave girl. Each slave girl had what? 2. So if I give birth to this 11th boy, my poor sister only have 1? She'll be humiliated. I won't let it happen. So what did she do? V'ischalfu ibarya b'meihon. What does that mean, Rivka? V'ischalfu ibarya b'meihon. They changed the fetus in her womb.
Who changed it?
The boss.
He changed it in her womb.
Yes. V'hava Yohiv Yosef b'mo de Rachel. And God put, Leah was carrying the fetus of what? Yosef HaTzadik. So God did an IVF. He implanted the fetus of Yosef from whose womb? Leah b'mo de Rachel. In whose womb? IVF. 3,700 years ago. IVF. Sharona. Ein chadash tachas hashemesh. There's nothing new on. Please show this to Rabbi Reuben. He'll get a kick out of this. Look at this. Yosef b'mo de Rachel. God planted the fetus of fetus Yosef from whose womb? Into Rachel's womb. Vidina, wait a minute. Vidina and Rachel was carrying which fetus? Dina. So God made the old switcheroo. And he took the fetus of Dina from whose womb? From whom? B'miyah de Leah. And he took, Rachel was pregnant with what? They were both pregnant at the same time, Elisheva. Rachel was pregnant with whom? With Dina. Rachel was pregnant with whom? With Dina. And Leah was pregnant with whom? Yosef. So Leah said, I can't let this happen. Be humiliated. She won't even have 2 boys. So God made the IVF. He took the fetus of Yosef from whose womb? You keeping score? And put it into the womb of Rachel. And he took the fetus of Dina from whose womb? And put it in whose womb? Leah. IVF. 1 minute. Says Rav Aaron Soloveitchik. Hello. You hear? According to Yonatan ben Azil, Rachel was pregnant with Dina, while Leah was pregnant with whom? Yosef. So therefore, Leah said, I can't let it happen. My poor sister will be humiliated. Leah prayed to God that her male fetus, Yosef, be switched with Rachel's female fetus Dinah. This would enable Rachel to contribute what? 2 male sons to the tribes of Israel. She won't be less than a slave girl. God listened to Leah's plea, and Rachel gave birth to whom? Yosef. And Leah gave birth to whom? Dinah. Says of Aaron Soloveitchik, it's incredible. We see that Yosef's maternity is not attributed to whom? To the egg donor. Who was the egg donor? Leah was the egg donor. And yet, he is considered to be the son of? But why? He was conceived in whose womb? Leah. And yet, he's called Yosef ben Rachel. Why not Yosef ben Leah? Who was the egg donor, Yehuda? Leah. It was Leah's fetus.
Was it less than 40 days? Was it done at less than 40 days? That's the question in this case.
But the bottom line is we see what? That the birth mother of brother Joe is not what? Connie, it's not what? Leah, even though Leah was carrying the fetus. But the birth mother is Rachel. So Aaron Soloveitchik, you see, black on white, it doesn't matter who the egg donor is. Who's the mama? The mama. The birth mother. So, if the egg donor is a Yiddish woman, but the birth mother is non-Jewish, the child is not Jewish. The child needs what? Conversion. Doesn't matter who the egg donor is. The egg donor was Leah to Yosef. It was Yosef's, was conceived in Leah's womb. That's IVF or surrogate. But transplanted by the boss in whose womb? Rachel, and therefore Yosef is called the son of Rachel, not the son of Leah, even though he was conceived in whose womb? Leah. But he's not Leah's son. He's always called Yosef ben Rachel because it's the birth mother that decides who the child is, not the egg donor. It doesn't matter. It's incredible how everything is in the Torah. And Rav Aaron Soloveitchik will bring this Targum Yonasim and Ezekiel lahalacha. You hear this? So therefore, if the egg donor is not Jewish and the birth mother is Jewish, does the child need conversion? No. The other way around, if the egg donor is a Yiddish and the birth mother is not Jewish, then the child does need conversion. I'm not finished yet, but go ahead. Shoshana, yes?
My question is, we all know that Rachel Imenu had enormous schut because she saved her sister Leah from humiliation.
Okay.
Okay, now Leah paid it back. But what, I mean, maybe this is not a good question, what was God's intention in not wanting to give her 2 sons, Zahapila, to give her a daughter and then a son, right?
What was God? God wants us to do Tikkun Olam. Why is this written down? That we have to do the Dodoyim. Ask a better question. Shoshana, ask a better question. What's the message of the Dodoyim? Ruvain went looking for the Dodoyim. Remember those flower plants? Why did Rachel want them so much?
To get pregnant.
Says the Ramban, it was an aphrodisiac or it was what? Medicinal. Mandrakes, the Dayim. Why does the Torah tell me about that? I need to know 3,700 years ago, Reuven went looking for mandrakes, and he bring it to his mother Leah because she stopped giving birth. And Rachel said, please, I got to have it. Why is the Torah telling me that? So the Ramban says it was an aphrodisiac and had medicinal to help a woman get pregnant. But Rachel and Leah, the greatest tzaddikas, how come they didn't just daven to Hashem? What do you need mandrakes for? And why tell me about it? Says the Ramban, to teach that God only helps those. Isn't that incredible? Not stories, Rabbi Yaakov. Rachel and Leah, great satkaniot, prophets. Of course they daven, Kani. But it ain't enough. You gotta daven, and you've got to go to doctors, get mandrakes, do doyim, whatever it takes, because God only helps those who
Help themselves.
The Ramban, the great message. Shalom, the great message of why the Torah tells me the story of the Dodoyim, Shoshana. Do your best, and only then will God do the rest. But if you sit like this and daven all day, Lillian, it's not going to happen. How do we know? Rochel and Leah, the greatest Tatkaniot, you think they didn't daven? But they did shtadlut, mandrakes, whatever it takes, says the Holy Ramban. God helps those who... What a powerful message from the Torah. It's not stories, not history books. Only when you do your best will God do the rest. Yes. I answered Shoshana. I think I did answer Shoshana. I didn't answer you?
They saved each other from humiliation.
Whatever it is, that's the message. We have to learn that.
But here's a lesson.
It's not enough to daven all day. You've got to go to doctors and do what you can do. That's the message. We're not J witnesses or whatever they're called, the Seventh-day Adventist.
There were no
Right?
witnesses in the J story.
Judaism is not like Christianity. We have to help God. Kaviyachol. Yes.
The Hebrew language supports your position.
Thank you.
The Hebrew word for mother is aim.
Aim.
The mathematical equivalent is 40 and 1. She becomes a mother on the 41st day.
Oh.
That's where it's born.
Oh.
But can I say something?
I'm not finished yet. The greatest sage who ever lived was Rabbi Akiva. You agree? Turnus Rufus asked after Moses, Rabbi Akiva. Turnus Rufus, the Roman governor, asked Rabbi Akiva whose work is greater, man's work or God's work? Rabbi Akiva said, man's work. Turnus Rufus said, what? You great rabbi? How could you say man's work is greater? Said Rabbi Akiva, I'll prove it to you. You ever try eating raw wheat? Feh. A hot roll from Angel's Bakery or Berman's Bakery. What's tastier? Raw wheat or a hot roll from Berman's Bakery? What's tastier? What? Who makes raw wheat? God. Who makes a roll? Man. So you see that what? Rabbi Akiva said that. Medrash Rabbah. So what's the point? If God could make oranges and apples grow on trees, Lillian, he could make a Danish grow on trees. Apples, oranges, cherries, he couldn't make a Danish grow on a tree? Come on.
He made man.
What's the point? He loves man so much that he purposely left the Bria undone to give us the awesome privilege of Tikkun Olam. Of Tikkun Olam. And therefore, he laid raw wheat. You take the raw wheat and turn it into a delicious roll or Danish. Be my junior partner, Tikkun Olam. How much God doesn't need partners, but he demonstrates how much he loves man. He left the Bria undone. Why did he make people sick? To give the awesome schus to doctors to cure them, says Rambam. And the Rambam should know because he was what? And they asked him, the pagans asked him, not pagans, I don't know, Islam, why, Rambam, why are you healing? You're going against God's will. Who makes a person sick? So Rambam, aren't you contradicting God's will by healing him? The Rambam says, get real. The God made him sick to give me the schus to heal him. God's will is that I should heal him. There's one profession that God calls himself in the Torah. Ani Hashem roifecha. I am God, your MD. That's all God says. That's why every Jewish mother wants her son to be a doctor. That's God's profession. My son, the doctor. That's God's profession. Ani Hashem roifecha. Mahu afatav, alachta bedrachav. The pasuk in the Torah, alachta bedrachav, Rabbi. What does that mean? So if God's profession is a physician, therefore there's so many Jewish doctors. All the doctors, the best doctors are Yidden. Valachta bedrachav, mahu afata. God says, I'm a doctor, follow the leader.
Does that mean not to go to a Goyish doctor?
No, you can go to Goyish doctor too. But many doctors happen to be Yidden. You admit that, right? That many doctors have to be Jewish. Rav Soloveitchik has something incredible, this idea, Rabbi, and go so far. What's more important, water or bread? Water. You can live without bread, you can't live without water. So how come on water, the after bracha is chick-chack?
There is no bracha.
There is, bar nefashot.
You don't even have to say a bracha.
Bar nefashot. And bread, you make a lange berchat hamazon. Why?
It's bread is a sustainer.
Says Rav Soloveitchik, water, it bubbles up from the spring. You didn't do anything. It's a welfare check. I feel a bit, like a nebish. Welfare check, I didn't do anything. Bubbling up from the spring, so after a bird of foshes chick-chack. But bread, it takes 11 stages to take the raw wheat and turn it into a Danish. Cheese Danish, Entenmann's, says Rav, for the, or bread. 11. Look in 10. But you look in the Mishnah in Shabbat, it's 11 stages. 11, to take the raw wheat and turn it into bread. Stage number 11 is afiyah, baking it. It's 11 stages. Look at the Mishnah in Shabbos. The first 11 are making bread. For the awesome privilege of being involved with God in 11 stages to turn the raw wheat into what? A Danish or bread. For that, we give him a lange birchat hamazon. Not a wealth.
So we won't say
God allow me the privilege to be involved with him in 11 stages to turn the raw wheat into bread. For that privilege, for that schus, I give him a lange birchat hamazon. You Rav Soloveitchik? So if doctors are involved with curing a patient, they're doing God's work. V'rapo yerapeh. You have to cure and Nochamol. Says Rambam, as much as it takes, it's a positive mitzvah for the doctor to cure. Now, if you turn your page over, Yehuda, you're not going to believe this. Turn the page over, the Meiri in Sanhedrin. The Meiri, one of the great Rishonim who lived in France in the 1200s. Rabbi Ram, you have it over here? Fasten your seatbelts.
248 on this.
It says page 248. I think it's underlined. Rabbi Aaron, you want to read that? Is it underlined? Bet. Stop. He's talking about over here, a Jew is not allowed to do hocus pocus and black magic. You want a child, you want to win the lottery, are you allowed to go to hocus pocus black magic? No. Again, you see there's a base there? I think there's a base there. No, Yehuda?
yes, it's a bit.
Kol shehu nase b'pula tivit. Any action that is done, maze b'pula tivit, Sharona, what does that mean? In a natural way, eino b'klal kshafim, is not considered black magic. Afilu, look at the next word. Afilu what?
Even.
Yodu livra, briot yofot. Mankind will be able to create beautiful creatures. Shaloi mizivik hamin, even without the sexual act. He's talking in 1248. Human beings will be able to create beautiful human creatures. Shaloi mizivik hamin, even without what? Sexual intercourse. Kemo shenoda b'sifrei hateva. What's he talking about? As is written in the books of nature, shein hadov nimna. It's not impossible.
Shouldn't be prevented.
Science will be able to create beautiful human beings even without the sex act. I think that's IVF, a test tube baby sperm donation. How did the Miri know this in 1248, Elisheva? Ha-fochba va-fochba de kulaba. The Mishnah says, whatever you want to know about anything, where is it? You just have to know where to turn. Rishoyim la'asot, the Baron, Rishoyim la'asot, they're permitted to what?
Do anything natural.
Shekol shu TV. Anything that's done in a natural way, Eino Bechlal HaKishuv. You see that, Abraham? Shalom, you have it? Eino Bechlal HaKishuv. V'doime lozeh amru, kol sheyesh bo b'shim refuah. Anything that's done to cure and infertility is what? A sickness. Kol sheyesh bo b'shim refuah. Anything that's done to what? Cure. Ein boy b'shim darkei amoiri. It's not called the ways of paganism. So the Meiri in Sanhedrin Daf Samaches says science will be able to create beautiful human beings without sexual intercourse. And it's not only okay, but if that's the only way to go, that's the way you should go. Isn't that incredible? What?
What's contemporary halacha say about this?
I'm telling you what contemporary halacha. I just quoted you Rav Aaron Soloveitchik. I quoted you Rav Nevin Saul. I quoted Rabbeinu Yosef that the sperm donor is the father of the child even without the act of sexual intercourse. We're talking about IVS. It's both. IVF and cloning. It's the same idea.
What he just said.
Right? What?
What you just said covers cloning.
But it covers
I really like it.
it covers cloning too. It covers cloning too. It covers IVF and it also covers cloning. How do we know that it's okay? There's an amazing Tiferet Yisrael in Mishnah Yadayim chapter 4. He says as follows. Anything, you don't have it on your paper, but you can look it up. The Mishnah chapter 4, Mishnah 3 in Tractate Yadayim, the Tiferet Yisrael says, anything which there is no reason to forbid is permissible because the Torah does not list all permissible things, only the forbidden ones, without having to find a reason for a heter. If the Torah doesn't asser it, it's permissible. So says the Tiferet Yisrael, the great super commentary on the Mishnah Tractate Yudayim, chapter 4, Mishnah 3. So therefore, the greatest halachic scholars of today have said that IVF is kosher, sperm donation is kosher if there's no other way to do it that way, and also you do the mitzvah of pruvu. According to Rabbeinu Ovadia Yosef, Rav Nevin saw that the sperm donor is the father of the child even without the act of sexual intercourse. This is based on a rule in the Bet Shmuel in Even Ezra chapter 1 that any male involved in the IVF is therefore the father of the child conceived and has fulfilled the mitzvah of what? Pruvu, the first mitzvah, even though no act of marital relation took place. So that child would have to honor his father, not the test tube, not the test tube. The child would have to honor the sperm donor, not the test tube. What?
What if his father's not Jewish? If the sperm donor is not Jewish?
That's a very good question.
Still Jewish.
What? The child is Jewish because his mother is Jewish.
He's Jewish, but does he have to honor his father?
So Rav Vadia Yosef was asked a question. To answer your question, Rivka, I will what? Rav Vadia Yosef asked, should a ger say Kaddish for his non-Jewish parents? A ger. Should he, may he say Kaddish to his non-Jewish parents? Because ger shedet gaya kekotan shenolad. A ger is like a newborn baby. Halachically, a ger has no parents. He's a newborn baby. Rav Vadia Yosef was asked the question, should a ger say Kaddish for his non-Jewish parents? So Rabbeinu Ovadia Yosef, not only may he should.
Has to sit Shiva?
Doesn't say about Shiva, but he says he should. They're not his parents anymore. Hakorat Hatov. Who brought him into the world? Derech Eretz Kodba LaTorah, says the great Rabbeinu Ovadia Yosef. Derech Eretz Kodba LaTorah. Menschlichkeit. They gave him life. Without the Goyish parents, he'd never find the true way. So said Rabbi Yosef, not only should the mitzvah, Yechavada, Simon Samach, Rabbi Yosef Paskins, it's a mitzvah for a ger to say Kaddish for his Gentile parents. Because he says, even though halachically they're not his parents, but derech eretz, Kani, kodma laTorah, hakara tatov, menschlichkeit, that comes before the Torah. They gave him into the world. And he says, not only that, if his goyish parents are sick, he should make a mishaberach in shul for them. Ya'amod mishaberach Rosemary Clooney or John O'Reilly. That's what he says. Rabbi Yosef says that it's a mitzvah for a ger if his parents, goyish parents, are sick. It's also a mitzvah to make a mishaberach in shul for Rosemary Woods or John O'Reilly because derech eretz kodma laTorah, he says. You hear what Rabbi Yosef says? I think he's a Haredi, superstar posek. Because menschlichkeit comes before the Torah. Some people say, don't confuse me with the facts.
So the same goes for adopted.
So the Zel Bazach. So the same thing. This child conceived by a goyish derech eretz. Who gave him life?
How long did they?
He owes hakarat hatov. What? How long do you say Kaddish? A year, right?
A year.
So I say for a year. What about the egg donor? What? The egg donor doesn't count. Remember we said? It's Mayim Ba'alma.
It's just a smelly drop.
The egg donor is Mayim Ba'alma. I read you Rab Soloveitchik's language. The fertilized egg is not viewed as any entity prior to 40 days. Since the egg donor's relationship, says Rav Aaron Soloveitchik, with the fetus ends before the 40th day, it is a relationship with no halachic status whatsoever. Therefore, says Rav Aaron Soloveitchik, we cannot ascribe any type of relationship between the egg donor and the fetus. The egg donor, he says, is viewed no more than synthetic material. Therefore, a child born from a Jewish mother with an implanted egg donated from a Gentile requires no conversion at all, even according to the strictest interpretation of halacha, states of Aaron Soloveitchik. Backed up Rabbeinu Ovadia Yosef. Yes.
What about a ger if she lost a sibling? Does she do the same thing as she would do for her parents?
That's a good question. Does she owe any gratitude to the sibling? I think. What? Sibling was good to her? No. A sibling. A big sister, younger sister. Derech eretz. That precedes the Torah. And he said, not only should you, mitzvah nami. He writes, the great Rabbi Yosef, mitzvah. What does mitzvah mean? It's a mitzvah to do it. Huh?
Commands.
They gave you life. They brought you into the world, right? You owe them.
Did we ask the question about the Jewish egg donor in a goyish? Yeah. Needs to be converted
A Jewish egg donor,
into
a goyish mother, of course the child needs what? Conversion. The egg donor doesn't count. It's the birth mother that decides the status of the child. The birth, and the raya is from Rachel and Leah. Who's Rachel's mother? Who was Yosef's mother? The fetus came from whom? Leah. And he's not called the son of Leah. Don't mix me up. He's called the son of. It's amazing that Rav Aaron would quote this Yonasan ben Azil, Sharona lahalacha. Takes wide shoulders to base this halacha on what? It's not a minute. Well, it's a Targum Yonasan, but it's also Yevamot 69. That the fertilized eggs before 40 days is Mayim Ba'alma. It's not an entity at all prior to 40 days. All right? Yes?
Could you please check for me? I'm just curious.
Go ahead.
If, as you just said, at 40 days it's not an entity,
Right.
and somebody wants to have an abortion.
An abortion.
40 days,
So again,
why should it not be allowed if it's not?
that's a great... 1 minute.
Just allow it if it's a danger to the mother.
What? Ooh. Aaron is cooking, Rabbi Aaron is cooking glass. So before 40 days, it's not a problem of abortion, but there's a law in the Torah not to wound yourself. There's a law in the Torah not to make a chabura. You can't be a masochist. Say, thanks, I needed that. There's a law in the Torah not to cause yourself needless pain. Rivka, listen, please hear me well. Please hear me well. So, for no reason, you're not allowed to make it, even before 40 days, the woman is inflicting a wound on herself. So they have to have a reason to do it. Otherwise, it's not an abortion before 40 days, but it's making a wound. And you need a good reason, otherwise not allowed to do it. And Rav Moshe Feinstein deals with the question of cosmetic surgery. Cosmetic surgery. It should not be allowed because you're not allowed to cause yourself a wound. If you need an operation, the greatest mitzvah is staying alive, Rabbi Aaron. But cosmetic surgery, there's a law in the Torah, Rivka, to cause yourself what? Needless pain. But then he has a shaila from a girl who feels that her nose is too long. It's amazing. The shaila is that and she's afraid she won't be able to do a shidduch. So he interviews her. He sees she has a lot of mental anguish. Mental anguish. She's depressed. So he gave her a heter to have cosmetic surgery on her nose only after he interviewed her. Because he saw she's depressed, and depression is an illness, and she's afraid she won't get married, so there's a tzairech there. How do you say that in English? There's a tzairech, a necessity. He gave her a heter. But otherwise, to have cosmetic surgery is prohibited because you're not allowed to cause yourself pain or a wound. There has to be a necessity. Tzarich. Great Moshe Feinstein had very wide shoulders, right? So he saw the woman that was freaking out, standing in front of the mirror trying to hide her nose. So he gave her a heter to do cosmetic surgery. What? If you break your nose on purpose, you're not allowed to cause yourself pain, Connie. A Jew is not allowed to cause himself unnecessary pain. Just like you can't cause pain to another Yid, you can't cause pain to yourself. I'm also Jewish. Connie, I'm also Jewish. So if I can't cause pain to another Yid, I can't cause pain to myself. So surgery, when it's necessary, v'chai b'hem, staying alive, right? Or you feel that you can't do a shidduch, you become depressed. So this is the idea. Any other questions? One more.
Not a question, but medical ethics is a very interesting topic, so if you could do more of it.
Billy Nader.
Very interesting.
Okay, that's interesting. Billy Nader. Very good. Thank you so much. Shkoyach.